Hi guys, I'm Jesse at Strobepro.com, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Godox AD200 Pro. Now you may be familiar with the original light marketed under the Strobepro X200 or the Godox AD200. Now we've had some significant changes since then. When that light first came out, it was really revolutionary in the photography market. It had a small form factor, it had TTL, high-speed sync, remote power control, and it had several different heads that you could put on that. Since then, it's really kind of taken over as a go-to portable light, and the new version has just added on some extra features that make it even better. So let's take a look, see what's in the box and what it's all about. So just before we get into the box, a quick overview of some of the new features. So the biggest thing that you're going to notice on the new version here is it's got a whole new screen. It's a new LCD screen, higher contrast, better viewing angles. It's got a brand new mount on it, so it's a lot more stable with the included mount. It has faster recycling time, which is great. It'll fire up to 500 full power shots and recycle in 1.8 seconds at full power, which is awesome. And it's also got a new color stability mode, so plus or minus 100 degrees Kelvin across the entire power range, which is really unheard of, especially in a light of this size. So those are a couple of the main features. There's a lot more stuff that we're going to get into. So let's open up this box and see what we've got. One of the things you might notice different right off the bat is that the box is branded as Godox. Don't worry, this light is still fully covered from Strobepro with our 2-year warranty, which is the best in the industry. We cover everything here at the shop. If by some reason we can't fix your damage, if you dropped it from really far and smashed it to pieces, then we deal with the factory directly. So you don't have to deal with any third parties. Everything is handled with Strobepro, and that warranty is included, which is awesome for your peace of mind. Another thing to keep in mind is that this light is fully compatible with all of our Strobepro speed lights and strobes and triggers. So whether it's Godox or Strobepro, they are fully compatible with each other. So right away, we're going to get into the case here. It's a nice padded hard case here, so this is going to protect your light from any damage. It's zippered as well, has a handle on the top there. And inside, we're going to find a number of things. We've got our zippered pocket, so if you want to keep memory cards or cables up there, that's a great place to do that. But inside, we've got our charger here, and this is all fitted in foam here, so it's not going to slide around, which is really nice. We've got our charger and then the cable for our charger. We have our battery. We have our flash tube. This is the AD200 mount. We have our bare bulb head right here. And then we've got the light itself. And on the light, you'll find the Fresnel head is already attached to it. So the first thing you're going to want to address is the battery. Now normally the batteries will come with a slight charge in them, but it is a good idea to throw this on the charger before you use it first and just get a full charge in there. You'll notice this white cap on the top here, and you're just going to pop that off. It's just a protective cap. If you're traveling with this battery detached from the actual head, then it's a good idea to throw that on. It just protects the contacts. Now, your charger is pretty self-explanatory. Basically, you have a cable, plug that cable into the charger, and then that into the wall. These are multi-voltage, so if you are in another country, these can be used on 220 as well. And then your charger, just line up the contacts on the battery, and you'll see the 2 pins inside there. And it's just going to sit right in there, and it'll click in, and it will indicate as it charges on the top there. So pretty easy to do that. Once it's all charged up, you're going to go to your light, and again, just take a look where the contacts are, and then you'll have the contacts inside the battery. There's also a groove here, which is an alignment groove, and there's kind of a V-notch, so it will line up. It's going to drop in. It's spring-loaded in the bottom there. To secure it, just push it down, and it's going to lock. To remove that, the battery removal clip is right there. You're going to pop that out, hold it so it doesn't go flying out on you, slide it across, and the battery will come right out. So easy as that, our battery is in. Next, we need to decide which head we want to use. The great thing about the AD200 Pro is that you have two options. So you have your Fresnel head, which is on here, which essentially is just like a speed light. So it's going to be more of a directional light. It's going to project a little bit harsher. You're going to get harder shadows off of this, but it's a great way to really throw the light. Now, if you want something a little softer that you're going to be using in modifiers, then we really recommend using the bare bulb head. So you're going to have two pieces here. We've got our bulb, and it's in a protective glass. It's always a good idea if you've got oily hands or something, just throw on a glove or use a cloth. But we have a dot on the bottom of that flash tube, and then we have a red dot inside here as well. And we're just going to line those two up, and we're not forcing anything. Just make sure it seeds in there properly. It goes in, it's secure, and that's how you install the bulb into the holder there. And to remove this head, we have, just like on our battery, we have a locking release here. So we pull that release and then slide the head up, and it's going to pop off. And you're going to see that all the heads, whether it's the Fresnel or the bare bulb or a round head, which we'll talk about later, have these pins. These are guide pins here, and that's what helps you line up the head to the body. So you'll see inside here we've got the notches. We line those up and then slide down, and it's going to lock in. You'll know you're doing it wrong pretty easily because the pins for the battery connection or the power connection will not line up. So it's really obvious if you're trying to go the other way that you are not lined up properly. So just flip it around, lock it in, and we're ready to go. Now I'm going to show you some of the exterior features of the AD200 Pro, and right away the biggest thing you're going to notice if you happen to own the previous version is the back of it. The back has been redesigned. It now has a recessed screen that's designed to help prevent any cracks in the screen if you happen to drop it. We've also streamlined the profile here on the top so it'll slide into brackets a little bit easier. So you'll notice the optical sensor, which is under this red strip here, that's flattened out a little bit more as well. And you can't see right now, but we do have the new LCD screen, which gives you better viewing angles in the sun. It's also brighter and higher contrast as well. If we flip over to the battery side, I showed you previously, this is the battery release, which we would just push, which releases the battery. Under this flap here, we have two different things. So we have a 3.5 millimeter PC sync port. So this would be used if you wanted to externally trigger this. Now we do have an internal radio receiver already built in. So the likelihood of anyone using these ports anymore is not very good because we have much better options. But we also do even have our legacy USB port. So going back 6-7 years now into the whole Godox line, those triggers are still compatible with even the newest models, and that's a commitment that Godox and Strobepro, working with them, have decided to keep in the lights. Now if we go to the front here, we have our head release, which we showed you before. Just pull to release the front head. Going over onto the other side, so this is our side mount for our stand mount there. Beside that, we have our power switch. So flipping the switch on and off will power up the light. On the bottom of the light, you're going to find your USB-C port here. This is used to upgrade the firmware, and you can find the latest firmware on our website under the help section. And it's a good idea just to periodically check that to make sure you've got the latest version installed. Next, we want to talk about mounting the AD200 Pro. And this is one of the new improvements over the last version, is we have a whole new mounting system. So previously we had a similar 1/4 inch thread on the bottom and on the side, but on this one you're going to notice two notches here. And what those notches are designed for is the new bracket. So the new bracket is metal. It's much more secure. We have rubber here, and plus those two notches, which when we put this head or this bracket on here, they line up, and what it does is it prevents this from slipping. And all I'm doing here, I'm lining up that 1/4 thread and then turning this dial, this little thumb wheel, until it gets tight. Once it's tight, we're good. Now that is not going to turn side to side. On the previous version, we had some times when if you had this over on a boom or tilted sideways, the head would want to kind of twist off because it didn't have those locking notches on there. Plus, we've got a really nice stepless design similar to what's on our X600 Pro and our 400 Pro. So new design on there as well, and this thing is just really robust. So you can mount on the bottom, or if you want to side mount it this way, you can do that as well. You would just flip it around and put it on there. But from here, all we would do is just back this thumb screw off and drop it on any Strobepro stand that has our standard spigot on there, which is basically all of them. And it's really easy to mount that way. Now, there is another option which we do recommend. This is great if you're just kind of getting started, you want to just put this on a stand to be able to shoot it remotely. That works, and it's definitely an improved version, but a better option and definitely worth the investment is picking up one of these S2 brackets. This is really, I would say, kind of a critical piece of equipment to purchase with your light, because what it allows you to do is to mount the light in here, but not only that, it gives you a spot for an umbrella to mount inside there, and we've got our Bowens mount, and that's the most important thing. So all of your Strobepro modifiers, whether it's a reflector, a beauty dish, a softbox, whatever it is, are going to fit directly on there, super easy, and this is nice and compact, so it will fit easily. To mount this, all we do is just back off the screw, making sure we've got a big enough opening. We're going to slide the head in, and because I've got the bare bulb head, we need to come the other way, just because it's got the thumb screw locking bolt up there. And we can bring it there, tighten it down, and then we can easily mount whatever modifier we want right on the front. There is a separate video on this entire mount system, so check that out at Strobepro. We've got it on the website there. Okay, we've got our S2 bracket mounted on the stand. Now we're going to add in our light, slide that in, and then just tighten it down. Now this, again, this bracket is sold separately, so I think it's definitely worth the price to have that. It's actually really inexpensive. Now, if we go to our 33-inch beauty dish here, we have our 3 prongs which line up to the 3 slots on the actual S2 bracket. And to mount that, we're just going to make sure they kind of line up there. And once it goes in flush, we're going to give it a quarter turn. You're going to hear that click in, and now it's mounted. From there, we can adjust the tilt to whatever we want, change the angle, and lock it back in place. Now, the great thing about this is all of our modifiers use the same mounting system, so you can get a 60-inch octabox or a reflector or whatever you want. It's going to have this so that no extra pieces required. It'll fit directly to that. One of the questions we get asked all the time is the AD200 Pro, does it have enough power to light, say, a 60-inch octabox? That really depends. Inside, I would say the answer is absolutely yes. You have tons of power in this 200 for lighting that. Now, if you're outside, you want to shoot high-speed sync at 1/8,000th of a second on the very brightest day, then you might struggle to overpower the sun a little bit. But in most situations, I would say you've got lots of power to light even large modifiers. The best thing about the AD200 Pro is that it has an entire flash ecosystem that goes with it. So we have the bare bulb head that's included along with the Fresnel head, and we've got accessories for these as well. So we've got things like our dome diffuser, which will fit directly on here. We've got a little mini softbox as well, and these are sold separately, obviously. But the really cool thing is we have other heads that we can put on this. A very popular one would be our round head. So this is absolutely great if you want really soft diffused shadows, soft fall off there. And if you get our AKR1 accessory kit, you're going to get all of these pieces included, which allows you to add things like gels. They're magnetic, they'll just snap on. We can layer that with a grid, dome diffuser if you want, or you could add things like reflectors and even barn doors as well. So you've got all kinds of different accessories that you can put onto that. And we have videos for all of these, which we'll link in the description as well. But we've also got stuff like the flash head extension. So if you're running up on a boom or something, you need a little bit extra reach and you don't want to send the actual body right up there. We have this head that you can run up there, and we can take either head, or actually all three of them, the round, the Fresnel, and the bare bulb, and you could set this way up a light if you need to. If you ever find yourself in a situation where you don't have enough power, say you need to boost that a little bit, what we can do is purchase the optional dual head, and this is going to allow two 8200s to be used to create 400 watts of power. So the way that we do that is we would just pop out our bare bulb, and that's going to attach right into the front, and we would run both of those bulbs in there. Again, you've got the line up, so just adjust the pin until it drops in there, and we would put the other one in here. And then our light is going to attach on the back just like it did with our separate heads. It locks in there, and the great thing about this, we also have two modeling lights that come with that, which you can't normally do on the bare bulb head. So this entire flash ecosystem, we have parts sold separately. You can really expand your creativity with all of these optional accessories. Okay guys, so we're going to power on the light here on our switch over on the side, and we're going to come up with our first menu. This is the default menu here, and we can see we are in wireless mode, and we can see that indicated because we have the wireless symbol, we have our group, and then we have our channel up there. Now the first thing you're probably going to want to do is spin this dial, and you can do that, but because we're going to be using the controller, anything that you set on here is actually going to be overridden by the controller. And in TTL mode here anyways, it doesn't matter, we can't control anything. But if I change the mode to manual, then we could use the dial and adjust there. But before we get to that, let's set our channel and our group. The way that we do that is with our channel group button over here. If we push it once, it's going to affect our group. So we can go A, B, C, D, E, and flip through those. We're going to leave this one on A. Now, if we long press that same button, we're going to highlight the channel, and it's going to start blinking. And we would use the dial to adjust to whatever we want. Now, we have 32 channels available. So you can select whichever one you would like, and we're going to lock that in there. Now keep in mind on your controller that you're using, and we have a separate video for all of our controllers, all you're going to need to do to sync these up is set the same channel, and then you can set whatever group you want. So we have multiple control for our groups on our controller, and so let's say we would set this one to A and our other light to B, and we have full control that way. So make sure you check out those videos as well. Now you're going to see that this dims in and out a little bit here. That's just because it's got a power saving feature, so I'll try to keep waking it up here so it doesn't dim out like that. But moving on here, what we can do is we can set our mode. So our modes, we have three different modes. So we have multi there, we have TTL, and we have manual. So starting with manual, like I showed you just a second ago, we can take that dial and we can adjust in 1/10 increments all the way up to full power, which is 1/1. And you can see the increments going. But we've also got a great new feature on this, which is the ability to dial all the way down to 1/256. So this is fantastic if you're the kind of person that shoots wide open, say you're doing newborn photos, you want to shoot your lens at 1.4 or 1.8, this is a great option for you to be able to do that. Okay guys, so going from manual, we're going to check out a couple of the different modes. So if we hit mode up on the top here, we're going to go into multi first of all, which we'll talk about in a second, and now we're going to go into TTL. Now TTL is through the lens, and most people know it as automatic mode. So with the Strobepro or Godox controller on your camera, you are able to communicate with this light, and your camera is going to set the best setting that it thinks for the proper exposure. Now, you might not always agree with what your camera chooses, so we give you a couple of options in the light to be able to compensate for that. And that's what's called exposure compensation. So if we go in here and we push the set button, we're going to see that flash, and we're able to dial in +3 to -3 stops of exposure compensation. So if you think that what the camera chose is too dark, then we would just hit set. Maybe we dial up, 2 stops to compensate for that. So that's just an added feature that you have in here for your automatic mode. Now there's a couple caveats to that, and let me show you those right now. I mentioned before that anything you dial on the controller is automatically sent to the light and that the controller is always in charge. Now this is a little bit of an exception to that. So you can see here that if I hit the test button, we're in TTL, we have 0 stops of exposure compensation, we have 2 there. So it should go to 0, but it's not. Why is that? Well, the reason is because the exposure compensation is independent and it's cumulative on the light. So that just means whatever I have dialed into the light is in addition to what I'm going to dial in on the controller. So I have 2 stops on the light right now, and I dial in, say, 1 more stop. Now I have 3 stops of exposure compensation dialed in. Now, why on earth would you have that? Well, some cameras tend to underexpose or overexpose their TTL, and let's say you take a shot and quite regularly it underexposes by half a stop. You can go in and dial your exposure compensation right into the light and just set it for half a stop, or say a third of the stop here, so that now we know every time we turn this light on, it's automatically going to apply a third of a stop exposure compensation. So you have a consistent baseline and you don't have to worry about it. So the only thing to remember here, exposure compensation on the controller, on the light, they add together. So remember though, this only applies to TTL. If I go back to manual mode here, you're going to see if I hit the test button, everything is sent automatically. So it's changing. Even if I change this and I go back and I fire again, it's automatically going to send those settings. So it only applies to TTL for that exposure compensation setting. Okay, now we're going to go into multi-mode, and we do that by just hitting the mode again, and you're going to see it pop up for multi, and we've got a couple of new numbers on there. Once again, you're probably going to want to control this from the controller because anything we dial in here would be overridden, but just for demonstration's sake, I'm going to show you on here. So a lot of people think in this mode it has to do with continuous high on your camera. It does not. You cannot just set into continuous high and this will automatically keep up with whatever you dial in there. This is designed for 1 frame exposures with a multiple sequence going through it. So for example, a skier going over a ski jump, trying to do a trick, you would get all of those sequences in the shot, but it's only in 1 frame. Or a dancer on a stage doing some kind of spin or something, same idea. So 1 shot, just keep that in mind, please. This is not to just set your camera in and go crazy and just burst off hundreds of shots at a time. So we've set our hertz there, we've set our number of shots. Now these can max out as well. So in the manual, you're going to see a chart that says how this kind of relates. So we can't go to full power, for example, and burst off 40 shots at 11 hertz. It's just not going to work. This mode is best used on lower power settings like this. So for stuff like that, it'll burst off like that on lower power settings. And you can play around with that, the number of shots, so we can probably still get this because on 1/64th, because the battery recycles so fast and this light is really good at keeping up. So you can play around with that mode. Again, set it from the controller because everything we set here is going to be erased if we start from this point. So if you're saying, guys, I only want this light so I can shoot in continuous high, well, you can still do that. It's just better done from the manual mode. So we would go back to manual and we would dial in a lower power setting. So something, 1/128th, 1/64th, around there. It's still very capable of keeping up with most continuous shots. You may drop a frame or 2 in there, but this thing recycles so fast, like faster than I can keep up with it. So you've got a very good chance of being able to use your continuous high in this mode on lower power settings. So I want to show you the rest of the buttons that we have out here. And the first one I'm going to show is the modeling lamp button. Now if I push this, it is not going to do anything to this light. It is not turning on any modeling light because we have the bare bulb head on there. Now if I want to see any type of modeling light, I need to switch the bare bulb and I need to put on the Fresnel head, or the round head is actually even a better option. It's got a brighter modeling lamp. So actually one thing before I do that, if you happen to not have a head on there and you turn that on, you're going to see this. A lot of people call us and say, oh, my flash is broken, it's giving me an error code. If you happen to see that, it's telling you you have no head on the AD200. So turn that off, put the head on, and then that error is going to disappear. Make sure it's snapped in properly, and we're back. So now if I turn the modeling lamp on or off, you're going to see that show up. Again, this is just for finding focus. You're not going to be shooting videos or anything for that. And again, if you do need that brighter modeling lamp, I do suggest picking up the optional round head. So the next button is the test button. It's pretty self-explanatory. You can test fire your flash. Not much more needs to be said about that. Going up from there, we have our wireless button. Now we are already in wireless mode, but if I hit that, what it does, everything disappears. So in this mode, let's say you wanted to trigger this optically, because we do have an optical sensor built in here, you could do that. So any other flash would trigger it because it's looking for that flash. Or you could plug into our PC port, which we showed you earlier on this side. You could say you were running Pocket Wizards and you wanted this flash to be on your Pocket Wizard system. You could plug that in if you wanted. In my opinion, that's kind of going backwards because there's so much more technology already built into here that it's really a no-brainer to pick up a controller if you haven't done so. So from there, we can actually just adjust the power if needed, but like I said, most of the time we're going to be in our wireless mode. Up top we had our group channel, which we already discussed, and then we had our modes over there. But if I push both of those together and I hold them, you see it says RST, which is reset. So if you screwed up something in your menu and you don't know what it was you screwed up, just reset it. It'll set it back to the factory default, and you can do that quite easily there. Now it's time for everyone's favorite part, our custom functions. So if we hit the menu button here, we're going to start off in our menu system. So the first one here, these are all labeled actually F1, F2, F3, all the way up to 8. If there's an extra firmware updates, they can go higher. But a better way to indicate what is doing what, we hit the menu, we see the little symbol. So that little symbol means the recycling beep. So right now it's off. So if I hit the test button, no beep. If I go into the menu, it's set, and scroll the wheel to on. Now when it flashes, it's going to beep. So some models still like keying off that, but this thing is so fast that it's constantly going to be beeping. So I do recommend probably just setting that to off. Now if we go to F2, now we just talked about our optical slave modes, and the way that we set those is we hit set, and now we can go to S1. S1 is now the optical mode, and it's looking for any other flash to trigger this. So it could be a pop-up flash, another speed light, anything you want, and this will fire in sync. Keep in mind that it has to be within line of sight, and that's what this top red bar is. It's looking for that flash through there. So again, a much better way is doing radio, which works up to 300 feet away, but in a pinch you could use this mode if needed. The other one there was S2, and S2 is still an optical mode, but S2 ignores a pre-flash, so it could be like a red eye reduction flash or a TTL pre-burst that we don't even see. It ignores that and then fires in sequence. Next, going on to F3 here, we have our sleep. So this will auto sleep from 30 minutes, and we can go all the way up to 90 minutes. If you're shooting off camera, I do probably recommend just leaving this set to off, but just in case you leave it in your bag and the power is turned on, that will shut it off for you. So in F4 here, we have our sync delay. So what we can do is hit the set button and we can adjust in milliseconds the number of milliseconds it's going to take before this then fires. Now, 99.99% of you are never going to use this feature, but it is there if you were using a third-party trigger or something and you knew it had a delay on it, so you could sync that up if you needed to. But we're not going to use that too often. Next we have the mask mode. This gets a little bit more complicated. Another feature, you probably won't use that often, but what this allows you to do is set masking, so it would fire 1 or 2 shots, so one exposed for the background, one exposed for the foreground, and it just makes it an easy way in post to be able to clip out those images. We'll show a separate video that you can check out on how to mask with these flashes. Moving on here, actually I'm going to set that back to 0 or off. Now we're going to go to F6, which is our T value. So this is our flash duration measured in T1. So if I hit set and go to on, now on the main screen, you're going to see our flash duration, which it can be useful if you're the kind of person that likes seeing that. It gives you a great visual indication. It's not going to affect the shot. It doesn't affect any of the settings at all. It just gives you that value displayed on the main menu there. So if you don't want that cluttering up your screen, you can just leave that off. Moving on to F7 now, hitting set. Now this is our ID. So in the controller we have an ID setting, so if you happen to be getting interference on one of the 32 channels, you can add in an ID which will go from 0 to 100. You could set an ID. Most people aren't going to need to do this, but you can go in and do that if you want and set that value. Just make sure that if you do set an ID in here, it has to be also set on the controller, or you're going to run into communication issues and these will not fire or even communicate with each other. So most of the time I recommend just leaving the ID off. So currently our last setting here is going to be F8. Like I said, through firmware updates, you could have 9, 10, 11 in the future, so you can check the latest version on our Strobepro website under the firmware section. But this is a new feature for this light, and it's our color stability mode. So normally this light in standard mode is going to be in color mode plus or minus 200 degrees, which is industry standard. That's 200 degrees Kelvin. But this light has the ability of being even more accurate, and you can set it into plus or minus 100 degrees Kelvin. So in those really color sensitive shoots that you're doing, you can set this in, and you do that by hitting menu. We'll go to set on F8, and you can see the C, it's indicating the color mode, and set to on. Now, when I did that, you saw something happen here. This test button started to flash. The reason that's doing that is because it's telling us that we need to dump the power in this mode. Because the modes operate, normal stability and color stability modes operate a little bit differently, this does not auto dump. So normally when we would turn the power down in any other mode, it would automatically dump the charge. Now this color stability mode only works in manual, and we have to dump the charge. So when I hit the test button, now it's saying it's not blinking. We are at 1/64th. The temperature and the power level is accurate here. But just remember, this color stability mode is only available in TTL, or in manual I should say, not available in TTL. So again, going from there and dialing the power down, we're going to see that light start to blink. So that's definitely something you want to keep in mind if you are operating in this mode. So what is the reason for this whole dumping the charge and all that? Well, older versions of strobes, whenever you dialed the power up, so let's say we went all the way up to full power, what's happening as we're doing that is the electrical charge is being pushed into the capacitors from the battery, and we've got that power stored in there now. So when we would fire that, that's all great, but when we wanted to go to a lower power, We would dial down, and that has no way of getting out, that charge that's in those capacitors. So then you would have to go and dump the charge. All of our strobes now do that automatically, so you don't have to worry about that, only in this color stability mode. So if I go in and I turn that off, set to off, you're going to notice that we don't have that blinking light at all. Go back. So I can fire, I dial down, there's no blinking, and it's already dumped that charge. And that's the great thing, it's called IGBT technology, and all of our current strobes have that ability to auto dump, which is great. So that completes our deep dive into the AD200 Pro. We've checked out all the features, some of the new changes on this one compared to the last model. So we've got our new screen, we've got our ability to go to 1/256 on its power stops, and it's a little bit faster as well, so you're going to recycle even faster than the old version. We also have the new mount on the bottom, but the great thing is that all of the accessories still fit between the two, so the batteries are the same, this bare bulb head or the Fresnel head, and you can even add the round head, which is also going to fit between the two generations. Not only that, it's still going to work with any of our controllers, so we've got the X1 or the XD controller and the new X2 and the XD Pro, so all of those are going to work directly with this light as well. We sell this in a bunch of different options, so you can get it on its own, obviously, which would come in this bag, or if you want to upgrade and do like a 3 or 4 light kit, we've got our Ultimate Traveler bag here, which is a really popular option as well. So you can pack 3 or 4 in this kit with your accessories and like your S2 bracket, so you'll be ready to go, no problem. So check out all the different options that we have on the kits, and if you have any questions, you can download the manuals or check our reference videos to the controllers if you have any trouble syncing anything up. So until next time, I'm Jesse at Strobepro.com.